tax breaks.
Without the tax breaks, without the incentives, without the cajoling and all of that. And you'd like to think that we could have such things in Arlington without as much as we're giving away.
Sure.
And I think that goes back to the other side of government, which is how many hurdles does government put in the way of businesses that are trying to make something happen?
Mm-hmm. Like organically on their own trying to make something
Yes,
happen. Yeah.
exactly. And organically, it seems like the bureaucracy that is government just puts things in the way without really even realizing that it's a hurdle and a barrier that's going to prevent a really quality project from coming to fruition. And there's always good intentions behind those barriers and those hurdles, and some of them even valid.
Sure.
But they accumulate and they become this big thing that just slows things down and prevents it from ever actually seeing the light of day. So I know we're trying to overcome some of that, but I think we're trying to overcome it in a way that is too expensive and difficult to justify when you look around the city and you
Sure.
see some of the challenges that the citizens are facing that are not being addressed.
Right. I mean, I think there's like a hierarchy of needs that a city has in some ways, and some of that stuff is you expect a city to do streets, police, fire department.
Right.
You expect them to do that, and everything else is kind of like an added bonus. It's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Like once you have shelter and your food taken care of, like then you can start working on self-actualization and all this. I think the city may have it almost inverted at times, where they put those like pie in the sky, like these are really great things that the citizens are going to love, at the detriment of the rest of the city, schools, roads, East Arlington in general, all that stuff. And so I definitely understand, like, as a citizen, I mean, I live here too, and I have lived here almost my entire life. So just being here long enough, you kind of get to see that about the city of Arlington, and I think that's unfortunate.
I think, and this goes back to some of the things I was saying a moment ago, and some of the things I said back in the campaign trail as well, is that there are people who are part of the leadership, self-proclaimed or not, within Arlington, who never see the other side of, not the tracks,
right,
but the other side of Arlington.
Whether that be east or southeast or southwest.
Exactly. There are pockets in multiple areas of Arlington. It's not just certain, East Arlington. But I think East Arlington is the most...
It's the most well-known.
Apparent.
Probably. Yeah.
And easy to see when you just drive through. And that's the thing. I don't think they're even driving through to see it.
Like the East, like Arlington ends for them like at the end of Collins,
Well, and I think even worse, some of them, they may drive through. They may see it. And their solutions come from a place, again, that's not communicating with the local residents. It's based on their preconceptions and how they see.
Or their ideas of what the solution should be. Not let's talk to the people there, the stakeholders, the people that are living it, to know what they actually want and need.
Because you mentioned a second ago about the hierarchy of needs, and I wonder how many of those folks that do that drive-through and do look around and go, oh, yeah, we need to make some changes, how many of them realize how few people in that area, or how many people, I should say, in that area are struggling to have a roof over their heads and put food on their table on a multiple times a day basis.
Yeah, and not just like, this is something that every once in a while. Like, this is life. This is reality for some people,
Yeah. No, I mean, whether we're talking people on fixed incomes or single-parent households or people who, the only job they seem to be able to get are those low-wage jobs that are part of the entertainment district where that's the only thing that seems to be available to them. And I'm glad they finally got a job doing something in the entertainment district. But when there's no possibility for them to move up where they're currently at and improve their financial situation, I think there are people that are just so frustrated they've given up on the local political scene, and that goes back to the campaign and the low turnout and
that's
the
historic,
other things.
I've gone back and looked at it. I mean, there's like 20,000 people roughly that vote in every May election.
Or less.
All right, exactly. Like 20,000 is like the top of that.
That's the peak. Yeah, definitely.
But in a city of, almost 400,000, that's insane to me.
It was fine when we had a population less than 100,000.
Sure, exactly.
Because then we're talking more than 20% of the population.
But
now we're talking 5.
And that 5% is, leading or, letting candidates come in and people be elected to those positions without input from the rest of the city, really. So.
Well, yeah, and not to go too far afield, but I look at some really interesting international comparisons, whether it be Hong Kong's community elections about 2 months ago or the Brexit vote in England, and you look and see how these things came about is because a lot of people got so fed up, they showed up at the polls.
It was
unexpected. And totally overwhelmed
Yeah.
everyone's projections that the opposite might happen.
Right.
Or the historical precedent that the opposite would happen. And they are simply like, you know what? We got nothing to lose. We're just going to show up. And we're just going to vote and express our opinion. And they can ignore it, but we're still going to do it anyways. And I don't yet see that
happening
here. And that's the part that I think most, I don't want to say depressed by, but frustrated, concerned, and honestly, I think that's the justification that they keep circling around to on the side that says, oh, we'll just do this and we'll do this and this, because they're like, well, people aren't going to show up, so we can just kind of do what we want to do, and they're going to be fine with it because obviously they're not showing up.
Right, because they don't, quote unquote, care enough to show up. But I don't even think it's a lack of caring. I think what you're saying. I think there's some of that. They don't have time for it, and also that they have grown frustrated with. Even if they do show up, it doesn't matter.
Well, if you're struggling to put a roof over your head and put food on the table,
you're not worried about
like the vote is not.
The vote is the last thing on your mind. And even if you thought it was going to have an impact on how to put food on your table and put a roof over your head, you probably at this point are very frustrated that you don't think that your vote is actually going to impact that side of it. So, yeah.
All right. So a little bit, I'm going to inject some
levity
here.
Good. We need some positive
escapism, which is my favorite type of ism. Are you a Star Trek person or a Star Wars person?
I think overall I'd have to say Star Wars.
Okay.
I've seen the latest Star Wars movie in the theater, but I don't have the proper streaming channel to watch the Star Trek. So kind of one of those things where I'm like,
You don't have Netflix?
Wait a minute. Now I'm really bad. Are they on Netflix?
All of the TV shows
like
are on
Next
Netflix.
Generation.
Including the new Picard?
I think that's only on CBS.
Okay. That's the one I was thinking about.
CBS All Access.
Right.
But Voyager, the original series, Next Generation, and Deep Space Nine and Enterprise are all on Netflix.
Apologies, I was referring to the most recent versions.
Okay.
Yeah, CBS and
well, I just
all
meant
that.
overall.
So, yeah. Overall, Star Wars, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, we're both in a group on Facebook called Arlington, Texas Talk.
Yes.
And I had happened upon a post where you were talking about the stadium, the new baseball stadium. I guess I need to specify what stadium.
Right. Number 3.
So you were talking about Globe Life Field and the retractable roof.
Yeah.
And you had, talked about how you didn't think the roof was going to be open very often.
Correct.
And so a bet came out of that between you and another gentleman on the in the group. And can you tell us a little bit about the bet and what the stakes are?
Right. So this started because I like to make sports predictions once in a while when I'm semi-involved in it, or at least find it interesting. And so I made this prediction about a week or so ago that the new Globe Life Field, or as I refer to it as tax hike field, and I stole that from a member of the media, so apologies, Mac Engel. But I predicted that it's not going to have the roof open more than 10 times per season for baseball-specific events.
Will also take that bet because there's no way it's not going to be open more than
How
10
many
days.
times has Minute Maid Park been opened?
Oh, a lot. They do it on at least every Friday when they do fireworks. So,
And that's a possibility.
Yeah.
But the raw numbers say 14 times per season or less
At Minute Maid Field.
at Minute Maid Field.
it's humid.
Now,
as-
Park, whatever.
Well,
yes, get out
true,
down there.
true.
Yeah.
But I didn't even use that as my reference point.
Okay.
Although some people thought that I was, and
Right,
that's
right.
fine. I used the other retractable roof stadium in
we
Arlington
have.
as my reference point, which is less than 10 times in the entire time it's been
Yeah.
open.
Yeah, that's pretty sad.
And I'm like, okay, if that's the historical reference point in Arlington, I'm pretty safe in saying less than 10 times a year for the new baseball park. And so I put that out there. And of course, I got a little feedback, people with their comments and stuff. And so I, kind of was like, well, I've basically put out my over-under. Now let's see if anybody's willing to bet me on this. And although people were giving me feedback, nobody actually said, oh, I want to bet you on that, until one guy finally did. Now, I was accused of changing my prediction, and I got to clarify something because the person, Arlington, Texas Talk, who made that accusation didn't notice that the guy who wanted to make the bet changed it himself. He said that he bet that the stadium roof would be open more than 10 times before May 31st of this year.
Which is like a shorter version,
I
a
would not have
truncated
made
version.
I would not have made that.
And I think you're smarter
Yes.
for not having wanted to make that particular bet
Yeah.
because he admitted that would be only 31 home games to possibly have 10 open roof games for. And I said, oh, I'm definitely taking this bet.
Yes.
And I'll use your criteria because you're the one who volunteered it. And so we have a little bet going. The criteria are the roof has to be open before first pitch, remain open into the seventh inning,
Ooh, those are okay.
okay? Because that's what a legal game in Major League Baseball
yeah.
is. If you reach the
If you're
seventh,
going by
if you-
pitching wise.
if you go into the seventh inning, then it becomes a legal game that even if it gets rained out, still counts in the stats and standings. So that was my reasoning for using that. And then we agreed to his criteria that it would have to be 10 times before May 31st, not including the May 31st game. And the consequences of the bet are going to be loser, so to speak, because I don't think there's a loser in this one.
No, I agree with the yeah.
Is the one who has to volunteer for a day helping a disabled Arlington veteran.
Well, that's a good bet.
So, like, really, there is no
It's a
loser.
win.
It's
Exactly.
a win-win.
Yeah,
Exactly.
It absolutely is. But I thought that was a really great a bet to see that. For those not familiar with Arlington, Texas Talk, sometimes it can be a pretty negative place.
That's an understatement.
So I was very excited to see something that definitely, because the stadium is kind of a divisive issue, and so it was nice to see something that could have like gone off the rails completely, turned into something that at the end of the day it was a nice conversation, or it was a conversation, and at the end of it you get this bet, and again someone wins, everyone wins, kind of.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, I've got a personal history with helping local partially disabled or completely disabled veterans.
You
and
did
I think
like a
that's
service project earlier,
did.
or last year, late
I
last year.
did. And, that was a lot of fun and was really impactful on that family's life.
Yeah.
And I became aware in setting that up of the number of other local veterans who are being overlooked, partially because veterans as a people group, generally speaking, and I really identify with this strongly, even though I'm not a veteran, are not the type of people that are going to go around asking for help.
Yeah.
They want to do things themselves.
And I completely understand that. I have a hard time asking for help myself. So
Right.
like-
Yeah. And so I think I think part of it is because they feel like they're not owed certain things, which is the exact opposite of, I
Right.
think, how most of us would view veterans.
Absolutely.
And so I came across multiple veterans who could have been helped by my service project, but I was dealing with a very defined project that I had to meet certain criteria because it was coming through my work, my company that I work for, and I needed to make sure that the funds were there to pay for it And so I had to do a certain way, and so I was kind of limited in who I could help and